Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unpacking the incredible rise and the absolutely devastating fall of Juul. We've all seen those slick Silicon Valley startups promising to change the world, right? But this might just be the ultimate cautionary tale of what happens when that ambition goes wildly, terribly wrong. Juul set out to literally destroy big tobacco, but as we'll see, they ended up creating a completely different public health crisis. Let's dive in.
It's absolutely crucial we start with Juul's original mission. These guys weren't evil masterminds. They were just product design students who genuinely wanted to, and I quote, improve the lives of the world's 1 billion adult smokers. Think about that. That's an incredibly noble mission. They wanted to save adult smokers from the deadly health impacts of traditional combustible cigarettes by giving them a much safer alternative.
But here is the dramatic irony that drives this whole story. Millions of underage teens ended up addicted to nicotine. There's no way around it. They didn't just convert former smokers. They accidentally hooked a massive wave of young people who had never smoked a day in their lives. Chapter 1. A Billion Lives to Save. So, we really have to trace this origin story back to a late-night design studio at Stanford University back in 2004. Founders Adam Bowen and James Motzes were taking a smoke break, and they started wondering if they could use technology to somehow make smoking safer. Well, during their research, they stumbled upon an absolute bombshell. It turns out, Big Tobacco actually knew how to vaporize nicotine way back in the 1950s. Crazy, right? Imagine if they'd released it then. But releasing a safer cigarette meant admitting their main product was deadly, so the industry just buried it. Adam and James decided to pick up exactly where Big Tobacco left off. Now, success definitely didn't happen overnight. In 2007, their first product, called the Plume, was basically a total disaster. It was complicated, the early prototypes caught fire, and get this, it actually required butane lighter fluid. Yeah, it didn't satisfy smokers at all. They were devastated, but they realized they just had to scrap the whole thing and start over from scratch. And that 2015 reboot, that would become the Juul. Chapter 2. Reinventing the cigarette. To actually pull this off, they engineered a highly specific three-part formula. First up, a minimalist, tech-forward design. Just a super sleek body and a pod. Second, and honestly, this was their golden ticket. They discovered old tobacco industry research on nicotine salts. See, regular liquid nicotine is incredibly bitter and really burns your throat. But nicotine salts dampened that harsh taste. And that allowed them to execute step 3, amp up the nicotine content to be even stronger than a traditional cigarette, but make it taste incredibly smooth using sweet flavors like mango and cram. This completely new design was an absolute revolution. There was no lingering smell, you could use it indoors, totally stealthily, but most importantly, it never burns out. With a traditional cigarette, you get to the filter and you stop. With a Juul, the only stop signal is the end of the pod, which is the nicotine equivalent of an entire pack of cigarettes. There was literally no natural stopping point. That terrifying infinity loop is exactly what made it so wildly habit-forming. The public and the media absolutely lost their minds over this, dubbing it the iPhone of e-cigarettes. It really did look like something Apple would make. And here is the kicker. Because it had no actual tobacco in it, it somehow completely sidestepped the incredibly strict FDA advertising rules that choked traditional cigarettes. That little loophole gave them a total free pass to aggressively market a highly addictive chemical to a massive, completely untapped demographic. Chapter 3. The Viral Vaping Epidemic. To launch the Juul, their marketing team kicked off the Vaporized campaign. But instead of targeting those 1 billion adult smokers they wanted to save, they targeted young millennials. They threw these massive parties, handed out free samples to influencers, and created vibrant, colorful ads featuring young, healthy people dancing around. Sound familiar? It was literally the exact same playbook Big Tobacco used decades ago to hook young people. And the human cost here was just devastating. Take this quote from a teenage user, for example. "I became so addicted to vaping. I was even a gymnast, and I remember not having enough energy to do the things I needed to do." Think about that. Teens who had never even smoked a cigarette were suddenly dealing with intense nicotine withdrawal, anxiety, and just extreme exhaustion. The product was simply too good at delivering nicotine. Remember that beautiful, minimalist design we talked about a minute ago? Well, it became the ultimate tool for deception. As one teacher noted, kids would literally use them in class under their desks and charge their Juuls openly from their computer as it just looked like a USB drive. High schoolers were essentially chain smoking right under their teachers' noses. And the FDA data came out and confirmed our worst fears, an 80% increase in high school vaping and a 60% increase in middle schools. Let me put that into perspective. Roughly 1 in 5 high schoolers were now regularly using e-cigarettes. This wasn't just some passing trend anymore. Public health officials officially declared it a full-blown epidemic.
But while public health officials were absolutely panicking, Juul's investors were popping champagne. This youth epidemic fueled explosive financial success. Juul hit a $10 billion valuation 4 times faster than Facebook did. Can you believe that? They were one of the fastest growing companies in history, practically printing money as their sales literally doubled every 3 months.
Chapter 4: The Deadly Turning Point.
The crash happened with terrifying speed. In July 2019, hospitals started reporting multiple cases of teenagers with severe lung damage and respiratory failure. Tragically, several teens actually died. By August, the CDC was issuing massive public warnings, and by late 2019, states were hammering Juul with lawsuits and outright banning their famous flavors. The public panic was absolute.
Now, it is absolutely vital to clarify a key medical fact right here. The acute hospitalizations were primarily linked to vitamin E acetate. That's a cutting agent used in counterfeit black market THC and cannabis vape pods, not official Juul pods. However, because Juul was the undeniable face of the teen vaping epidemic, they took the absolute brunt of the public and regulatory beating for this entire tragedy. And the corporate fallout? It was catastrophic. Both original founders were forced to resign. Juul had to pay nearly $3 billion in legal fines to settle thousands of lawsuits. In 2022, the FDA even tried to pull them off the market entirely. Their valuation, which was once soaring in the tens of billions, plummeted 95% down to just $450 million. The company was completely gutted.
Chapter 5: Becoming Big Tobacco.
So remember Juul's original mission, to destroy big tobacco. Well, the stark reality, they ended up selling a 35% stake to Altria, the biggest cigarette manufacturer in the United States, for $12.8 billion. The founders became overnight billionaires, sure, but their employees were crushed. They were now working for the exact enemy they had sworn to defeat.
And here is the ultimate tragic irony of this whole story. Back in 2007, Big Tobacco was actually running out of young customers. They desperately needed what they secretly called replacement smokers. And Juul, they essentially solved that problem for them. By creating a wildly addictive, super easy-to-use product, Juul unwittingly hooked an entirely new generation on nicotine, essentially handing the tobacco industry the perfect tool for its own survival.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to ponder. Did Juul just do Big Tobacco's dirty work? Did the tech world's ambition and that whole move fast and break things mentality simply end up building a better trap for the oldest enemy in public health? It is a crucial question to ask yourself the very next time a shiny new startup promises to save the world. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you next time.